You have a camera in your office, the little girl whispered. But it's not yours. Carter William froze. His hand hovered over the keyboard, the soft clatter of keystrokes dying midward. The afternoon sunlight spilled through the tall windows behind him, casting warm light over polished walnut shelves and the flickering blue of his workstation. But none of that warmth touched the space between them. Not after those words. He turned slowly, as if the air had thickened around him. Maya stood there, half hidden in the doorway, her small fingers gripping the edge of the mahogany desk like it was the only thing anchoring her. Maya, his voice was careful. Too careful. The 9-year-old looked up at him, dark eyes wide, shoulders drawn in, and stepped closer. Her sneakers barely made a sound on the thick rug. Her voice dropped lower as she leaned in, close enough that he could feel her breath warm against his ear. It's behind the painting, she said. The one Miss Vanessa brought. He blinked. In the 6 months since the accident took her parents, his brother and sister-in-law, Maya had hardly spoken more than a sentence at a time. She watched. She listened. She kept to herself like a shadow pressed against the wall. Carter had given her everything, the best schools, a private therapist, a room full of soft lights and books and gadgets. But he hadn't given her this. He hadn't earned this kind of voice from her. What do you mean, a camera? He asked. Maya glanced at the painting in question, a muted abstract of a city skyline hanging just above his bookcase. It was tasteful, unobtrusive. He remembered when Vanessa had brought it over, her smile as she teased him about needing a little softness in his workspace. I saw it blink at night, Maya said, and I scanned it. The signal doesn't match any of your devices. Carter's stomach tensed. Scanned it? She nodded. I used my tablet. I ran a network trace when I couldn't sleep. He leaned back slowly in his chair, regarding her in silence. Maya, quiet, observant little girl who barely spoke to adults unless pressed, had just told him something no adult in his security team had picked up on. And she wasn't even supposed to be in here. Maya, how long have you known? Since last week. Her voice was small but steady. But I wasn't sure you'd believe me. Carter's throat tightened. Vanessa had hung that painting 4 weeks ago. She'd said it was a gift to celebrate his deal with Homeland Security. She'd kissed him just beneath it, whispered that she was proud of him. They'd eaten wine-poached salmon while it watched silently from the wall. He stood. With slow, deliberate steps, he crossed the room and lifted the canvas from its hooks. It came away easily, revealing smooth drywall and, just below the top molding, a black circle no bigger than a pencil eraser. A lens. A hidden live camera. His jaw locked. Maya, go wait outside for a minute, he said quietly. No. The firmness in her voice stopped him. She wasn't being disobedient. She was being brave. She was still holding on to something, information, maybe, or fear. Either way, she wasn't going anywhere. He gave a slow nod and motioned her closer. All right, sit. Maya perched on the edge of the leather guest chair, hands folded in her lap. She didn't fidget, didn't squirm, just looked at him with a gaze far older than any child should wear. I checked the signal history, she said. It started right after Vanessa hung the painting. But now there are others. Smaller ones in the living room, in the den. She paused. I think someone's listening to you. Carter felt a chill crawl up the back of his neck. He stared at the wall where the painting had been, his mind racing through the past month. Vanessa's sudden interest in his schedule. The way she lingered near his desk. Her insistence on tidying up his office herself. Her habit of arriving with coffee just when he needed it, always at the perfect moment. The coincidences had been too perfect. And now they weren't coincidences at all. Maya waited quietly, watching his face. He turned to her. You've been carrying this alone. She nodded once. He let out a breath, long and unsteady. I believe you, he said. She blinked. It was the first time she looked uncertain. You do? I should have believed you the first time you said it. The corners of her mouth didn't move, but her shoulders softened just a little, and that said everything. Carter reached for the painting again. The camera sat embedded in the frame's curve, so small it could have been decorative. But it wasn't decorative. It was deliberate. It was betrayal. And if Vanessa planted one, how many more were hidden? Maya, he said, voice low. I want you to keep watching, but only if you feel safe. Can you do that? She nodded. He rested a hand gently on her shoulder. From now on, we do this together. No more secrets. She looked up at him, and for the first time since she'd arrived in his home, she smiled. Not the kind of smile that meant she was being polite. The kind that meant someone was finally listening. What would you do if the person you loved was spying on you, and they weren't working alone? And Carter, now fully alert and furious in a way he hadn't felt in years, turned toward his desk and opened a new secure terminal. Vanessa would be home soon, and this time, he'd be the one watching. Pause for suspense. If you felt that shift, if Maya's quiet courage and Carter's rising fury stirred something in you, then don't leave just yet. Hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if your own home was listening in? Because this story, it's only just beginning. The wind outside Carter's estate shifted, tugging at the tall trees that lined the perimeter like sentries. Inside, the air had grown still, dense with unspoken understanding and something colder, deeper, the end of illusion. Vanessa would be home in 27 minutes. Carter knew this because her routine was precise. She always left her boutique consulting firm at 5:35 p.m., stopped for a decaf soy latte from the cafe 2 blocks over, and arrived back at the house at 6:12, give or take a minute. She would smile, hang her coat on the antique hook she insisted on installing near the front door, and come to find him, always with a casual, "I missed you," and a kiss that tasted like lavender in control. He stared at the painting now resting on the floor, frame slightly cracked from where he had wrenched it down. The camera lens stared back at him, lifeless yet damning. Maya sat on the far end of the couch, her legs tucked under her, tablet open in her lap. Her tiny fingers swiped quickly across the screen, bringing up signals Carter's system hadn't flagged. Not once. How many? He asked without looking up. 5 that don't belong, she replied. 2 in your office, 1 in the living room, 1 in the guest bedroom. She hesitated. And 1 in your master suite. Carter inhaled slowly through his nose. It wasn't anger, not yet. Anger was still an emotional luxury. This was calculation, cool and precise. You've seen them all transmitting? Yes. I mapped their activity. Most of them are quiet during the day, but between midnight and 4 a.m., they all go active for short bursts. Which means someone's collecting data in intervals, Carter muttered. Batch transmitting, trying to stay off grid crawlers. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. That kind of protocol wasn't amateur work. This wasn't some private eye hired by a jealous ex or a tabloid leak. This was targeted, high-level surveillance, the kind he designed his entire company to prevent. And it was happening under his roof. He rose from the desk and crossed to the tall oak cabinet on the wall. With a flick of his fingerprint and a silent swipe on the keypad, the panel slid open to reveal a matte black server tower humming gently against the wood. He pulled a secondary cable, connecting Maya's tablet directly into the diagnostic port. "You're in," he said. Maya looked up, startled. "You're giving me access?" "I trust you," he replied. Apparently more than I trust my own damn firewall. Her eyes widened, but she didn't smile this time. She just nodded and got to work. While she traced signal paths through layers of digital noise, Carter moved back to his desk and accessed the central security dashboard. Every camera, every mic, every access log since the system's installation came up like a digital nervous system. Vanessa had access, limited, of course, but that hadn't stopped her from supplementing it. He flipped through motion logs. Several entries stood out. Movements triggered in rooms no one should have entered. Guest bedroom on Wednesday. Living room at 3 a.m. last Sunday. And one log with no source signature at all. Blank. Whoever had placed these devices didn't just want to spy on him. They wanted to do it without leaving fingerprints. A knock at the door startled both of them. Josephine, Carter exhaled and opened the door to his longtime housekeeper and family friend. Her silver gray bun was tight, her pressed blouse spotless, but her eyes narrowed immediately when she saw his face. "Something's wrong," she said, not asking. "Yes," Carter replied. He gestured for her to come inside and quietly closed the door behind her. Maya didn't even look up as Josephine entered. She was too deep in code, face aglow with reflected blue light. Carter leaned in and spoke low. "Vanessa may have planted surveillance devices. Maya found them." Josephine blinked once. "Where?" "Everywhere." Her face hardened. "I knew something felt off. She's always lingering. Always knows too much. And she talks to that CFO of yours too often." Carter turned sharply. "Miles?" Josephine nodded. "He came by unannounced twice last week when you were out. Said he was checking paperwork. Vanessa acted like it was nothing, but I caught them whispering in the den. She didn't know I was listening." Carter's pulse ticked up. Miles. His right-hand man, his best friend since MIT. Could he have? He didn't finish the thought. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I need you to do something for me. Anything. When Vanessa gets here, act normal. Like we know nothing." Josephine's mouth tightened. "I've been playing polite longer than she's been alive, son. I can pretend just fine." Carter gave a brief nod. Maya's voice cut through the room. "I found something." Both adults turned. "There's a signal hub. All the devices route to it, but it's not here," she said. "It's off-site, somewhere in downtown Austin." Carter moved beside her and looked at the map she generated. A red pulse blinked on a building address tied to a small private storage firm with no obvious affiliation. "Whoever's behind this is good," Maya murmured. "They don't transmit constantly. It's like they're doing packet shadows, slivers of data, hard to trace." "And yet you traced it," Carter said. She shrugged. "I learned from watching you." Before he could answer, the front door opened and closed softly. Footsteps. He could hear her laugh float down the hall. Familiar, warm, rehearsed. Carter closed the server panel in a smooth motion and locked the tablet inside a drawer with Maya's quick cooperation. Josephine straightened her skirt and gave Maya a brief nod before heading back to the main hall, her expression once again composed. "Carter," Vanessa's voice called. "Where are you, babe?" "In the office," he said, walking toward the doorway. Maya slipped quietly to the side hallway just as Vanessa appeared, arms full with takeout bags and a bottle of wine peeking out of her purse. "There's my genius," she said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. He let her. She looked around. "Smells like server heat in here. You working hard or hardly working?" He smiled tightly. "Just running diagnostics. A few glitches in the system." Vanessa paused, eyes scanning the room with that trademark playful curiosity. "Anything serious?" "Not really," he said. "But I'll probably do a full reset later." "Need any help?" "No," he replied. "You've helped enough." She laughed. "Well, if I didn't know better, I'd think that sounded pointed." He didn't answer. She placed the food down and stretched, the movement slow and deliberate, comfortable. Too comfortable. He watched her for another long beat, noticing the way she slid her hand along the edge of his desk, right above the drawer that now held the only thing she didn't want him to see. "We should eat before it gets cold," she said, turning. "I'll be out in a bit," he replied. She blew him a kiss and walked off, humming a tune that didn't reach her eyes. When the door closed behind her, Carter sat down slowly and pressed his hands together. His temple throbbed. He didn't want this to be true, but it was. He could feel it beneath her affection, her perfect timing, her feigned sweetness. She was watching him, using him, and she wasn't working alone. Behind him, Maya stepped out of the shadowed hallway. "Uncle Carter?" she asked. He turned. Can I help with the reset later? He stared at her for a moment, then nodded. You already are. The house had gone still again, the kind of quiet that only came after a storm or just before one. Carter sat in the darkened office long after Vanessa had gone upstairs for her nightly bath. The scent of her lavender body oil still lingered faintly in the air, as if even her presence left strategic residue. The wine had remained untouched on the kitchen counter. The food she brought had gone cold. Neither he nor Maya had the appetite to eat after what they knew now and what they still didn't. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor by the server cabinet, a blanket wrapped around her small shoulders. The glow of a secondary monitor reflected off her round glasses. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, silent and focused, analyzing packets Carter wouldn't have expected even a junior engineer to notice. At some point, Josephine brought them both mugs of hot chamomile tea. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. The look she gave Carter as she closed the office door said more than words. I've seen women like her before. You're not crazy. Keep going. Carter leaned back in his chair and studied the ceiling. He'd been trained to detect patterns, dissect threats, build defenses tighter than a nuclear vault. And still, Vanessa had gotten through. She had used him. Used this home. Used Maya. He clenched his fists. Got something? Maya said, her voice low but charged with energy. He wheeled his chair over beside her. Show me. I mapped her cloud activity, not her personal account. She's too smart for that. But the devices she planted are syncing to a private server hosted offshore, masked behind a shell company in the Caymans. Maya clicked through tabs. Here's the IP trace. I ran it against known activity logs. She brought up a dataset Carter knew well, prototype access logs from his own system, blueprints, algorithm test results, beta encryption routines. This is yours, she said. And she tapped another tab. And this is where it ends up. Carter stared at the second screen. He recognized the formatting. It was Orionex's system interface, proprietary, internal, confidential. The watermark in the corner was unmistakable. Vanessa wasn't freelancing. She was an agent. A corporate spy. She was working for his greatest competitor. How the hell, he muttered. I built firewalls to stop nation-states. And Maya glanced up, her voice quieter. She got in because you trusted her, not because she outcoded you. Carter didn't respond. The truth sat heavy in his chest. She was right. The breach hadn't come through the network. It had come through the heart. Is Miles involved? He asked, almost afraid of the answer. Maya hesitated, then pulled up a video file. It's grainy, she said. But I think it's enough. The footage was timestamped 3 nights ago. It showed the living room, angled slightly from the bookshelf, a view Carter didn't remember authorizing. Vanessa walked in first, carrying a thin silver case. Moments later, Miles followed, glancing over his shoulder like a man not quite convinced he was alone. In the video, Vanessa placed the case on the table, opened it, and extracted a USB drive. Miles said something, no audio, but his posture said everything, confident, familiar, impatient. She handed him the drive, and he nodded before tucking it into his blazer. Then they embraced. Not like friends. Like co-conspirators. Carter leaned back, swallowing hard. I need air, he said. He stepped out onto the back deck, the cold biting more than he expected. The sky was clear, stars cutting through the dark like sharpened pins. The pool lights shimmered gently, untouched. 6 months ago, he'd adopted Maya, hoping to give her safety, stability, something that resembled a home. But she had ended up protecting him, watching over him while he played the role of guardian. He heard the sliding door behind him. Uncle Carter. Maya's voice was small. He turned. You should be sleeping. She came out barefoot, pulling the blanket tighter. I couldn't. He crouched and rested a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he said softly. You shouldn't have to carry this. I wanted to tell you sooner. Her voice cracked. But I didn't want you to think I was trying to ruin things. He frowned. Why would you think that? Because she makes you happy. You smile when she's here. You laugh. And I thought maybe if I told you, you'd think I was trying to break that. Carter closed his eyes. The pain that pierced through him wasn't from betrayal. It was from realizing that a 9-year-old had silenced herself for his comfort. She'd chosen his feelings over her own safety. No one should ever ask you to do that, he said, pulling her into a hug. Least of all me. Maya didn't say anything for a moment. Then, muffled against his shoulder, she asked, "So what now?" He pulled back and looked her square in the eyes. Now we flip the game. They went back inside, both of them colder but clearer. Carter opened a hidden drawer in his office desk and pulled out a phone, secure, unregistered, used only for emergencies. He typed a number from memory. "Read," he said when the line clicked. "I need you." The voice on the other end was clipped, ex-military. "Give me a time and a location." "Tonight." "Here." "Quiet surveillance." "No uniforms." "Understood." He hung up. Maya tilted her head. "Who's Reed?" "Old friend. Private security. He's handled dirty corporate takedowns before." Carter's voice was low, measured. "We'll give Vanessa and Miles what they want. Let them think they're getting everything they came for. But we're going to control what they take." Maya's eyes lit with understanding. "You want to feed them false data." "Exactly. And while they're celebrating, we'll be recording everything." He brought up the company's prototype interface and started crafting fake build logs, misleading algorithm structures, and backdoor-laced software packages. Maya helped, inserting trigger codes that would log every machine accessing the files. As they worked, Josephine returned, carrying a metal tin of oatmeal cookies and a fresh mug of cocoa. "You two look like you're preparing for war," she said, setting the tin down. "We are," Carter replied. She didn't flinch. Just poured the cocoa, handed Maya a cookie, and said, "Well, then you'll need sugar." It was almost dawn when Carter finished building the decoy server. Maya had long since nodded off in the armchair, her tablet still resting against her chest. He looked over at her, a blanket draped over her small frame, and something inside him shifted. This wasn't just about stopping Vanessa or protecting trade secrets. This was about protecting the only person who had protected him when he wasn't looking and making damn sure the people who violated that, who tried to use this family, this home, as a battlefield, never got another chance. He dimmed the lights, glanced once more at the quiet hallway upstairs where Vanessa still slept, and whispered to the silence, "You have no idea who you messed with." Morning would come soon. And with it, the beginning of the end. Pause for tension. The sun rose behind a thick veil of winter clouds, casting the entire estate in muted gray. Vanessa padded into the kitchen, wearing Carter's navy robe, humming softly to herself as if the night before hadn't shattered the walls around her. She poured coffee, added almond milk, always kept it stocked for her, and sat at the island, scrolling through her phone like any other fiancé starting her morning. But Carter saw it now. The controlled movements, the slightly too casual poses, the way she positioned herself in front of the window, just in line with one of the newly discovered hidden cameras. Every gesture was performance. He entered the kitchen without a word, dressed in a simple charcoal sweater and jeans, his expression unreadable. "Morning, love," Vanessa said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Slept okay?" Eventually, Carter said, opening the fridge. "You seemed tense last night." She sipped her coffee. "Everything all right at work?" "Just thinking through a few problems," he said evenly. "But I think I've got a solution now." Her smile sharpened just a little, as if sensing a shift. "Good. I'd hate for anything to ruin the holidays." She leaned in to kiss him, but Carter turned slightly, offering only his cheek. She hesitated, just for a blink, and then recovered with a laugh. "Grumpy morning, man," noted. Carter checked his watch. "I'll be heading into the city for a few meetings." Might be gone most of the day. Want company? Not today. He saw it, just a flicker behind her eyes. Disappointment, maybe. Or recalculation. All right, she said. I'll catch up on reading. Maybe take Maya shopping. Maya's staying in today. She's got a project she's working on. Vanessa nodded too quickly. Sure, maybe we'll bake something later then. Carter gave a short smile and left. But he didn't go far. From the garage, he circled around to the guest house out back, where Reed and his two-man security team had spent the night setting up a mobile command station. Cables snaked across the hardwood floor, feeding into thermal monitors, audio interceptors, and video logs. Reed, graying and built like a linebacker who never quite retired, nodded when Carter stepped in. She's up, Reed said. Her phone pinged a connection to that offshore server at 6:12 a.m. She's already transmitting, Carter asked. She's testing your movements, gauging your patterns. What about Miles? Reed turned his monitor. He just booked a one-way ticket to DC, leaves tomorrow. No luggage, no return flight. I think this thing's coming to a head. Carter stared at the screen. It's going to end today. Reed crossed his arms. You sure you're ready for this? I'm not the one who needs to be ready. He turned toward the second monitor, where Maya sat at her desk in her room, hoodie pulled tight over her head, typing like her life depended on it. In a way, it did. Back in the main house, Vanessa paced the hallway, speaking softly into her phone. Her tone dipped in sugar. I'm telling you, he's acting different, she whispered. More guarded. There was a pause. No, not yet. I need more time. He's still building that neural mesh, and I need the latest framework before we extract. Another pause. I'll get it. He trusts me. She ended the call and turned, only to find Maya standing there. Vanessa forced a smile. Hey, sweetheart. Didn't see you. Maya didn't smile back. Uncle Carter says I should work in my room today. Vanessa crouched slightly. Of course. That's smart. You're such a bright girl. Maya's eyes didn't blink. Are you going to be here when he gets back? The question was quiet, but it landed like a slap. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Vanessa said, standing up straighter. Maya nodded and walked away. In the command trailer, Carter watched the exchange on a split screen. Reed shook his head. Kid's got more steel than half my team. She's been through worse than most adults ever will, Carter said. And she's still here, still looking out for me. By mid-afternoon, Carter returned home under the pretense of forgetting his laptop. Vanessa greeted him with open arms, but he sidestepped the hug again, heading straight for the living room. He opened his laptop and pretended to log into work. In truth, everything he did that day, every keystroke, every phone call, was part of the trap. At 4:02 p.m., he sent a dummy file labeled NMAI Neurasync prototype final to his desktop and accidentally left it open while stepping away for a call. Vanessa, who was reading on the couch, didn't even hesitate. The moment he disappeared into the kitchen, she sprang into motion, pulling her phone and scanning the screen with a small flat device Carter hadn't seen before. It was sleek, military-grade, and it transmitted the file in under 20 seconds. Reed's voice crackled over the earpiece in Carter's ear. She took the bait. Sending everything to the Cayman's node. Copy that, Carter whispered. But the real coup came 15 minutes later. Miles walked in through the back entrance, claiming he had a meeting with Carter. Vanessa, not expecting him so early, panicked, just briefly, but it was long enough. Why are you here? She hissed. We need to move up the timeline, Miles said. He's slipping. You said tomorrow. I don't care. I want it now. Maya, sitting quietly in the hallway nook, recorded every word on her tablet. Carter waited 2 more minutes. Then he stepped back into the room. Miles and Vanessa turned, their smiles pasted on in panic. Didn't know you had guests, Carter said. Miles cleared his throat. Just dropping by. Thought we could catch up. I thought you were flying to DC tomorrow. Miles blinked. Who told you that? Carter didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the bar and poured a drink. To catching up, he said, raising his glass. Vanessa's voice was a little too cheerful. Actually, Miles was just leaving. No, Carter said, calm. He can stay. He gestured to the living room chairs. Both of you, sit. Something in his tone made them obey. Reed entered seconds later with 2 more men in civilian clothes, each one subtly armed. Vanessa rose immediately. What is this? Please, Carter said, motioning her down again. We're just having a conversation. A very overdue one. He turned to the large wall monitor and tapped a button. The living room screen lit up, showing footage of Vanessa transferring the files, then Miles receiving them, then her whispering on the phone. Vanessa's face went bloodless. Miles stiffened. You bugged me, she asked. No, Carter said. You bugged me. I just found your bugs before you did. Silence stretched. You don't understand, Vanessa said, her voice starting to crack. I didn't mean to fall in love with you. It was supposed to be a job. But you did fall in love, he asked. I think so. Maybe. But I had no choice. You had every choice, Carter cut in. You walked into my home, slept in my bed, lied to a child. He turned to Miles. And you. After everything I did for you. Miles stood slowly. Carter, come on. Let's not turn this into something it's not. No, Carter's voice was sharp now. Because what it is treason. Reed stepped forward, reading Miles and Vanessa their rights. As they were let out in cuffs, Maya stepped into the room, watching silently. Carter turned to her. You okay? Are you? He crouched and pulled her close. I am now. And as the front door closed behind the betrayers, Carter knew this was only the beginning. Justice had spoken, but trust that would take time to rebuild. Pause for emotional weight. The morning after Vanessa and Miles were taken into custody, the mansion stood in an unnatural stillness. It wasn't the silence of calm, but the pause after a storm, when everything feels too quiet to trust. Carter sat at the edge of his bed, still in the clothes he'd slept in. He hadn't turned on his phone, hadn't opened his laptop. The weight of betrayal hung heavy across his shoulders. He pressed a hand over his eyes, exhaling slowly. It wasn't the loss of Vanessa that tore at him. It was the truth of how close he'd come to losing everything. And Maya, if it hadn't been for her. A soft knock came from the hallway. Carter turned. Come in, he said, voice low. Maya stepped in, wearing her oversized hoodie and fuzzy socks. She held a mug in both hands. I brought you coffee, she said, carefully walking it over. I didn't know how you like it, so I just made it the way you made it for me last week. Carter took the mug, his fingers brushing hers. Thank you, sweetheart. She sat at the foot of the bed, swinging her legs gently. Is it over now? I wish I could say yes. He sipped the coffee. It was a little sweet, a little strong, just like her. But taking them down doesn't mean it's done. I have to fix the damage. Will they go to jail? Most likely, he said. But they won't be alone in there. Reed uncovered more names last night. This was bigger than just them. Maya was quiet for a moment, then softly, do you trust anyone now? Carter looked at her. I trust you. That answer made her lips pull into a tiny smile. Downstairs, Reed was already setting up the next phase. The mobile unit was replaced by a secure server, air-gapped from all external networks. He nodded when Carter entered the study. I'd been up since 4 a.m., Reed grunted. Got 3 forensic analysts combing through the data we intercepted. Turns out Miles was just the tip of the iceberg. Who's deeper? Board members. One of the VPs in R&D, hell, even a guy in accounting. Carter paced. How did this happen under my nose? Because you trusted them to do their jobs. And because they never moved against you directly until her. Carter clenched his jaw. She knew everything about my life. Everything. Reed tapped the files. That's what made her valuable. They studied you like a blueprint. Your patterns, your habits, even your emotional triggers. Hell, they probably knew your favorite jazz artist before she ever shook your hand. There was a pause. They played a long game, Carter muttered. Yeah, Reed said. But they lost. At lunch, Carter took Maya out to a small cafe in Midtown, an old diner with red vinyl booths and chipped mugs, a place he hadn't been in years. A quiet return to the familiar. The waitress, a woman in her 60s named Bernice, recognized him instantly. Well, if it isn't Mr. William, she exclaimed, nearly dropping her pad. Then what, years? Something like that, Carter said, his smile warming slightly. And this is Maya. Maya extended a hand politely. Nice to meet you. Bernice beamed. Oh, she's got manners. I like her already. As they sat and ordered pancakes and eggs, Carter leaned across the table. Why didn't you tell me about the camera the moment you saw it? Maya stirred syrup into her milk. I didn't want to sound crazy. I thought maybe it was for security. Then I watched Vanessa, and the way she'd always stand in certain spots, like she was being watched or performing. You saw what I didn't. I don't know if I saw it. I just felt something was wrong. Like how you know when a song's off key, even if you don't know music. Carter nodded, impressed. That instinct, don't ever ignore it. Later that afternoon, back at the estate, Reed summoned Carter into the library. He stood beside a corkboard filled with printed emails, call logs, photos, maps. We need to talk about New York, Reed said grimly. Carter stepped closer. What happened? We traced the financial channels. One of your subsidiaries, GlassTech Lab, has been funneling data through a shell company registered out of Brooklyn. And guess who signed the merger forms last spring? Carter didn't have to ask. Vanessa. Right before you proposed. Right before she started pushing you to expand into East Coast data integration. It was a setup from the beginning. Carter's hands balled into fists. What do? We go to the source. Quietly. No press, no announcements. We fly out tonight. Carter glanced toward the hallway, where Maya's laughter echoed faintly from the sunroom. She comes with us. Reed raised a brow. To New York? She's already been in the middle of this, and I trust her. Plus, I don't want her out of my sight again. They flew out that evening on Carter's private jet. Maya curled up beside him, headphones on, watching Hidden Figures. Carter glanced down at her every so often, the soft blue glow of the screen lighting up her small face. She had no idea how much she'd changed his life in just a week. In New York, they checked into a discreet boutique hotel near Soho. No staff recognized them. No headlines followed. The next morning, Carter and Reed made their way to a warehouse district on the East River. GlassTech's branch office stood sandwiched between an import company and a nondescript storage facility. From the outside, it looked like any startup satellite, but inside, rows of black servers, blinking red and green, told a different story. This place doesn't just duplicate files, Reed whispered. It replicates entire networks. It's a ghost image of your company's mainframe. Carter's stomach dropped. They weren't stealing pieces of your data, Reed said. They were building their own version of it, preparing to replace you. A man in a crisp suit stepped into the room. Mr. William. Didn't expect you so soon. Carter turned. Who are you? Name's Eric Vaughn. I'm the acting director here. Or I was. Cut the polite act, Carter said. We've traced your payments. We know about the offshore links. This place exists to dismantle everything I built. Eric's smirk dropped. You're too late. I don't think so, Reed said, tossing a folder onto the nearest desk. Signed confession from Vanessa Lane, backed by 2 terabytes of server data. It's enough to bury this place. Eric's eyes flicked to the folder, then to Carter. You're bluffing. Carter stepped forward, voice low. I'm not the man who builds a billion-dollar company and doesn't know how to protect it. You took my trust. You twisted it. And now you'll watch it come down. As they left the building, federal agents arrived in unmarked SUVs. Eric was escorted out in cuffs. From across the street, Maya stood beside a street vendor, munching a pretzel. Was that one of the bad guys? She asked when Carter approached. Yeah, Carter said. One of the last. Good, she said, wiping her hands. Let's go home now. Carter paused. Home. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was where she was. And after everything, that was all that mattered. Pause for reflection. Carter Williams stood silently in front of the old upright piano tucked away in the corner of his study. His fingers hovered over the ivory keys, unmoving. He hadn't played since his brother died, the accident that had taken both Maya's parents. But now, with the chaos momentarily quiet, the echoes of the past called to him in a language no camera could record. The key of memory. He pressed a single note. C. It rang out, clear and low. Behind him, Maya's soft footsteps approached, carrying with them the delicate hesitation of someone too wise for her age. Uncle Carter, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned halfway. Hey, sweetheart. Couldn't sleep? She shook her head and patted across the hardwood floor in her socks. I keep thinking about Vanessa and Miles and the guy in New York. I know they're gone now, but it's like they left something behind. Not stuff, but a feeling. Carter studied her face, noting how she pulled her sleeves over her hands, the way her gaze stayed low. What kind of feeling? Like the house is still watching. He closed the piano and reached for her hand. That's not nothing, he said quietly. It's your instinct, and we trust it, remember? Maya nodded, but didn't smile. Carter lifted her onto the bench beside him. How about a lullaby? Her brow furrowed. Do you remember any? He smiled softly, fingers moving into position. I remember one your dad and I used to sing when we were kids. Let's see how far my memory goes. As he played a gentle tune, Maya leaned against his side, eyes drifting shut to the sound of long-forgotten comfort. In that small, flickering moment, the mansion wasn't haunted by betrayal, but warmed by the flicker of healing. The next morning brought with it new momentum. Reed arrived early, briefcase in hand, his posture stiffer than usual. We've got another issue, he said as Carter joined him on the back patio, the Atlanta sun just rising beyond the tree line. Carter took a sip from his coffee. Of course we do. What is it this time? Reed handed him a document. Board meeting. Emergency call-in. 2 members want a vote of no confidence. They think your emotional involvement in the Vanessa scandal makes you unfit to lead. Carter's jaw tensed. They want me out of my own company. Worse, Reed replied. They want to split the company, section it off, and sell it in pieces. Easier for shareholders to manage. Harder to trace liabilities. Who's pushing it? Elliot Green and Tabitha Claymore. Old money, no loyalty. Vanessa gave them a reason. Carter paced the length of the patio, staring out at the morning mist curling across the lawn. If they think I'll go quietly, they haven't been paying attention. Reed opened his laptop. I pulled up their history. Claymore has financial ties to the very hedge fund that backed the dummy shell in Brooklyn. She's not just scared of liability. She's covering her own involvement. Carter leaned over the table. Then we expose her. Not yet. We don't have enough to make it stick in court. I don't need court, Carter said, eyes narrowing. I need clarity. Get me everything. I want to look her in the eye when I burn her bridges. Later that afternoon, Maya helped rearrange the photo wall in the hallway. She held up a framed picture of her parents, the one taken at Lake Lanier 2 summers ago. The sun had lit her mother's curls like wildfire, and her dad's arm had been slung proudly around her. Carter stepped in, pausing at the sight. "That was a good day," he said. "Yeah," Maya whispered. "They said I swam like a fish, but I hated the lake water." He smiled. And together, they hung the frame near the center, surrounded by older black and white photos of Carter's parents and uncles. "Why do people do bad things, Uncle Carter?" Maya asked suddenly. "Even when they already have everything?" Carter sat on the floor beside her. "Because having everything on the outside doesn't mean they feel full on the inside. Some people think taking more will finally fill that hole, but it never does." Maya was quiet, her fingers tracing the wood of the frame. "I don't ever want to be like that." He put his arm around her. "You won't. You have heart." That evening, Carter stood in the towering glass conference room overlooking the downtown skyline. The emergency board meeting had begun. Elliot Green cleared his throat. "Carter, let's be honest. The company has suffered reputational damage. Investors are nervous. Stockholders are pulling out. We need stable leadership, not someone personally entangled in a scandal." Carter's gaze was calm. "You mean I should step down because I refuse to ignore a criminal conspiracy happening under my roof?" Tabitha leaned forward, voice silky and poisonous. "It's about perception. Perception shapes value. And right now, your name triggers doubt." "Let me ask you both something," Carter said slowly. "Do you think it's coincidence that the woman who sabotaged my company also happened to push for policies you both financially benefited from?" Elliot stiffened. "Be careful, Carter." "I'm done being careful," he replied. "You pushed this meeting under emergency protocol, so let's treat it like an emergency. I propose an open audit of every board member's financial history over the last 2 years, including offshore transactions." Tabitha's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," he said. "And I've already started." He gestured to the door. Reed stepped in, holding a thick folder. "Forensic accounting," Carter said. "Care to take a look?" The room went quiet as Reed distributed copies. Pages rustled. Tension crackled. Elliot was the first to speak. "You don't have the authority." "I own the authority," Carter cut in. "And anyone who doesn't want to answer for their part can walk out now." Nobody moved. "Thought so," he said. Later that night, Carter sat alone in the living room, a fire crackling softly. He should have felt victorious, but instead he felt tired, not defeated, just worn in a deeper way, like something inside him had been cracked open and hadn't quite healed. Maya crept in, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Did you win?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "We stopped them." For now, she crawled onto the couch beside him. "Then why do you look sad?" He paused. "Because it never should have gotten this far. I kept thinking I could outwork betrayal, but the truth is, sometimes the people closest to you don't want to be saved. They just want to win." Maya leaned her head against his arm. "You still have me." Carter smiled. "That's the only win I really care about." And in that moment, the fire, the silence, the echo of a piano key pressed hours ago, all wrapped around them like the closing of a wound. Not healed, but finally beginning to close. Pause for emotional resonance. The following morning, the air in the William estate felt oddly lighter, like something poisonous had finally been exhaled. But Carter William knew better than to let relief dull his vigilance. Betrayal didn't vanish. It retreated, regrouped, and re-emerged smarter. And in this case, he hadn't yet touched the center of the rot. Vanessa was still out there, and she knew he knew. Downstairs in the sunlit kitchen, Maya was making toast. She wore one of Carter's old t-shirts, trailing just past her knees, and her hair was in its usual morning mess of tight, frizzy curls. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, not looking up. Carter poured himself coffee. Didn't. Too much thinking. Maya handed him a slice of toast. That's how you get those lines in your forehead. He chuckled, a soft, tired sound. You mean the ones that make me look wise and mysterious? I mean the ones that make you look worried and old, she said, finally smiling. He took the toast and ruffled her hair. You're cruel in the mornings. No, just honest, she replied, hopping up onto a bar stool. Then, quieter, are you going after her? Carter paused. He didn't need to ask who her was. Yes, he said finally. But not the way you think. I need proof, Maya. Not revenge, not emotion. Something undeniable, something that ends this. Maya nodded slowly, expression thoughtful. Then you need help. Carter raised an eyebrow. You volunteering? She nodded. I've been thinking about that camera and the closet next to your office. He looked at her sharply. What about it? I heard something once, like clicking. It was late, and I couldn't sleep. I thought maybe you were just watching something, but maybe it was more. Carter leaned in. You think the closet's the entry point? I think someone used it. Maybe to change the battery or to check recordings. That was enough. 10 minutes later, they stood together outside the closet door. Carter had Reed meet them there with a discreet security tech named Owen Young, quiet, brilliant, and absolutely loyal. Owen swept the area with a detection wand. It gave a soft beep near the crown molding above the doorframe. There, he said. Infrared line was broken. That's likely the receiver point. He climbed a small ladder and opened the paneling. Inside, tucked behind insulation and nearly invisible without close inspection, was a black signal booster the size of a deck of cards. Carter took it and turned it over. No manufacturer logo, no ID tag. Owen ran a quick scan. Encrypted broadcast. Frequency hopping every 3 seconds. It's not Wi-Fi based. Military-grade RF. Carter's jaw tightened. Vanessa didn't just want to spy on him. She wanted it to be untraceable. Reed frowned. Which means she wasn't working alone. No regular private investigator sets up gear like this. Carter nodded. Call in Leon. Reed blinked. Leon? I know we haven't talked in years, Carter said. But I trust him. He's the only one who's ever done what I'm about to ask. An hour later, Leon Barksdale walked into the estate. He was a thick, no-nonsense man in his 50s, bald, with deep lines around his eyes and a bullet scar visible above his collarbone. Been a long time, Carter, he said, shaking his hand firmly. Not long enough, Carter replied. But I need your help. Leon smiled faintly. When you left the agency, you said you'd never pull favors. You said you were done. I lied, Carter said simply. They went after my family. Leon's smile disappeared. Okay. Tell me everything. They sat down in the study with the recovered signal booster and the schematics of Carter's office layout. Owen walked Leon through the tech setup. Leon listened, silent, then stood. She's ex-military, special intel, or mercenary for hire. Maybe both. She's not after your money. She's after your assets, patents, proprietary code, something that's not in public IPO filings. Carter nodded grimly. She asked about Project High-End 2 weeks ago. Just casually. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. Leon looked up sharply. You never filed the High-End Core AI source with the patent office, right? No. It's on a closed, offline mainframe in the server room. Only Reed and I have the access code. Leon shook his head. Then she's not just spying. She's preparing for theft. Or worse. Reed stepped forward. What do we do? Leon's answer was immediate. Set the trap. That night, Carter invited Vanessa back to the estate. She hadn't expected it. I could see it in her stiff posture and her overly bright smile as she stepped through the door, wearing a navy silk dress and heels that whispered power. "I thought you needed space," she said, her voice dripping concern. "I did. I thought a lot," Carter said evenly. "About everything. About us." He poured her wine, watched her watch him. Behind his eyes, the plan was already in motion. Maya was safely with a neighbor, and every corner of the estate was under silent surveillance. Leon's team had set it up with surgical precision. They sat by the fire, talked about nothing: music, art, New York. She softened visibly, laughing like old times, and Carter let her. He leaned in closer. Her hand slid over his. Then he said quietly, "Do you ever wonder what trust sounds like?" She blinked. "What?" He smiled faintly. "It sounds like silence. The kind when you stop pretending." Her fingers froze. "You know what I realized," he continued. "I always wondered why you never asked about Hyan again. Then I realized you already knew everything you needed." Vanessa's eyes flickered. "You thought you were smart," Carter said, voice low now. "And you were. But you forgot the one thing about me you couldn't manipulate." She stood suddenly, face hard. "What's that?" "I listen," he said. "And I never forget who I am." From the hallway came Leon's voice. "That's enough." 4 of his men stepped in, one holding a recording device. "We got her signal test and her line ping when you mentioned Hyan." She activated a hidden transmitter. Vanessa turned to Carter, stunned. "You bugged me?" "No," he said coldly. "I let you bug yourself." She glared at him. "You'll never prove it in court." "I don't need to. You'll be gone before the board hears a whisper. And so will the people behind you. You don't know who you're messing with." "Oh," Carter said softly. "I do. You messed with a man who had nothing left to lose and a niece worth more than your whole operation." Leon approached with cuffs. "We're not cops, Vanessa, but we're thorough. And we never forget betrayal." Later, after she was taken away, Carter sat on the porch alone. The night was thick with cicadas and old regrets. Then the door creaked, and Maya appeared. "She's gone?" Maya asked. "Yes. Forever, I hope so." Maya sat beside him, pulling her knees to her chest. "I'm proud of you," she said. He smiled. "I didn't do it alone." She looked up at him, eyes serious. "We make a good team, Uncle Carter." "We do," he said. "And starting tomorrow, we rebuild, with no lies, no cameras, just trust." Maya leaned against him. And for the first time in weeks, Carter looked up at the stars and didn't feel watched. Pause for closure. 2 days after Vanessa was taken away, Carter William found himself standing alone in the heart of his company's Manhattan headquarters, staring out the panoramic window of the 35th floor. From up here, the city pulsed with indifference, horns blaring, lights flickering, people rushing. None of them had any idea what had nearly been stolen from them or from him. He sipped black coffee as the boardroom behind him filled slowly with voices. Reed entered first, carrying 2 sealed folders. Then came Ellen, the COO. Then Marcus Tran, lead counsel. One by one, each executive arrived, their movements slightly cautious. They'd all heard whispers about Carter's fiancée, about the investigation, about the hidden camera and betrayal, but none of them knew the full truth. Yet. Carter turned. "Let's begin." The hum in the room died instantly. Everyone sat, eyes on him. "I called this emergency meeting," Carter said, "because what almost happened to this company is a direct result of what we failed to pay attention to. Trust." He paused, letting the word hang. 4 months, a leak of classified architecture, mostly code frameworks and proprietary infrastructure, has been quietly bleeding out. We didn't see it because it wasn't financial. It wasn't loud. But it was lethal. He paced slowly, the rhythm of his voice unwavering. The breach came from inside. And it wasn't an intern or a subcontractor. It was someone with full access. Someone I trusted. Murmurs. Frowns. Eyebrows raised. Reed handed Carter the folder. He opened it, revealing internal security reports stamped with timestamps, signal analysis, and recovered transmissions. Carter let the silence do the weightlifting before continuing. Vanessa was part of a multi-corporate espionage ring targeting Hyan's core algorithm. Their intention wasn't just to steal it, but to discredit us in the process, releasing a compromised version under another firm's name, claiming we copied them. Ellen gasped softly. That would have destroyed our IPO. Exactly, Carter said. It nearly did. But we caught it in time. Reed passed around copies of the sanitized summary, no names, just enough to show the technical breach and how it was intercepted. Carter watched them read. Their expressions shifted: shock, unease, finally something close to admiration. We neutralized the threat, Carter said. But this wasn't just about one person. This was about how easily someone can infiltrate when we assume intentions without verification. So, from today forward, there will be changes. He looked at each face in the room. A full internal audit will be conducted. All senior-level staff, myself included, will undergo a complete background and communications security review. And I'm appointing a new internal ethics and counterintelligence advisor. Ellen leaned forward. May I ask who? Carter smiled. Leon Barksdale. There was a long pause. Then Reed nodded. Good call. Carter, Saturday, this isn't about paranoia. It's about clarity. We don't operate in the world we grew up in. We operate in a world where trust is currency, and we just got robbed. Later that afternoon, Carter stepped into a modest neighborhood cafe in Brooklyn. It wasn't fancy, but the coffee was strong, and the owner, a retired Navy vet named Hank, always had a jazz record playing in the background. The bells above the door jingled, and Carter spotted Maya at a corner booth with 2 cocoa cups and a sketchpad spread out. She looked up and grinned. You're late. I'm dramatic, he said, slipping into the seat across from her. Big difference. Maya sipped her cocoa. Did they believe you? They had no choice. I gave them the truth. She nodded, then tapped her pencil against the paper. I've been thinking. That always leads to something expensive, he teased. She ignored him. You should start something. Not a company, I mean something for people like us. Like a scholarship fund or a trust for kids who lose their parents but are still smart, still have something to give. Carter blinked. That's oddly specific. She met his gaze. I'm oddly specific. He reached across the table, tapping the sketchpad. What's that? She flipped it around. It was a logo, rough but clear, a stylized W with wings wrapped around a tiny figure holding a book. It's called the Maya Initiative, she said, matter of fact. It'll help kids in memory of the ones who didn't get a second chance. Carter swallowed, caught off guard by the lump rising in his throat. You thought all that by yourself? She shrugged. You always say pain should pay rent. So let's charge it something. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. You designed the program. I'll fund the first $1 million. Maya's eyes went wide. $1 million? You're my partner now, remember? Her smile could have lit the whole street. That night, Carter stood in the hallway outside Maya's bedroom. Her door was cracked open. He watched her for a moment, lying on her stomach, still sketching, humming to herself. She looked safe. He walked back to his study and sat at the desk. This time, there were no cameras, no lies. He pulled a small voice recorder from the drawer, pressed record. My name is Carter William, and today I want to remember this feeling. Not the fear, not the betrayal, but this moment, where I still have something worth protecting. He paused. Vanessa was never just a spy. She was a reflection of what happens when you stop asking questions. When love gets lazy, when instincts get silenced. I won't let that happen again. He clicked the device off. His phone buzzed. A message from Leon *. We traced the data path. There's more. She was working with someone inside Hyan *. Carter leaned back in the chair. So, it wasn't over. And maybe it never would be. But for now, he had a plan, a family, a mission. And that was enough. The next morning, Carter walked into the office with Maya beside him. She wore a small blazer over her hoodie and held a folder labeled proposal. The receptionist smiled. "Good morning, Mr. William." Carter nodded, then looked at Maya. Today, she gets her own desk. Really? Maya whispered. Carter grinned. Let's just say this company is under new management. Carter Williams' footsteps echoed down the hallway of Hyan's cybersecurity division, a floor that most executives rarely visited unless something had gone terribly wrong or needed to be silenced quickly. Today, it was neither. Today, it was a preemptive move, the kind you make when you finally realize you're not just running a business, you're guarding a legacy. At the end of the corridor stood Leon Barksdale, arms crossed, waiting with his usual steel-eyed focus. Behind him, a new private server room had been secured, triple access points, facial scans, and encryption protocols so advanced even the NSA would blink twice. Maya called it the vault, and it stuck. You ready? Leon asked without a greeting. As ready as you ever are when you're about to crack open the devil's inbox, Carter replied. Leon motioned toward the glass door. We decrypted her outgoing data. Vanessa wasn't just working for a competitor. She was building a network inside Hyan. Employees we trusted, vendors, even one of the assistant project managers. Carter's jaw clenched. So she didn't just come for me. She came for the whole foundation. Leon nodded. But here's the twist. She wasn't the top. She was middle tier. There's someone above her. Someone who never showed their face. Only referred to in her communications as Monarch. Carter exhaled, long and slow. You're telling me the person who orchestrated this entire scheme still hasn't shown themselves? Not yet, Leon said. But we're baiting them now. Later that afternoon, Carter returned to his office and found Maya perched at her new desk just outside his door. Her blazer was too big on her narrow shoulders, and her sneakers didn't match the building's marble elegance. But no one questioned her presence. Not anymore. She was the one who had spotted the first sign, the whisper in the storm. Now, everyone looked at her differently, like she belonged. She looked up from her drawing. They gave me a company ID and a badge and a coffee mug. It says World's Youngest Advisor. Carter chuckled. You earned it. Leon dropped off a package for you, she said, handing him a brown envelope sealed with a wax stamp. It looked old. Carter took it, studying the emblem impressed in the wax, a monarch butterfly. His heart skipped. He moved quickly, shutting the office door behind him. With steady hands, he opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of linen paper. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. Hello, Carter. You're a man of vision, but even visionaries can be blind. I never meant for Vanessa to hurt you. She was only supposed to extract information. The pain, that was her own flaw. Let's keep this professional. There's a deal to be made. Meet me alone tomorrow, 11 a.m., Battery Park. Bring no one, not even the girl, *. There was no signature. Just a small drawing in the bottom corner, a butterfly, wings closed. At 10:58 a.m. the next day, Carter sat alone on a weathered bench in Battery Park. The Hudson River shimmered under the pale morning sun, gulls calling overhead, joggers passing in pairs. No black cars, no cameras, no Maya. Just him, and the breeze, and a question that weighed more than the air. At 11:01, a man approached. He was tall, gray-haired, and moved with the smooth calm of someone who had spent decades in boardrooms, not battlefields. His suit was understated but expensive. He carried no briefcase. He sat beside Carter without a word for a full minute, then softly, "You were always too idealistic." Carter turned. "You've got me at a disadvantage." No, Carter, the man said with a ghost of a smile. You gave that up the day you fell for Vanessa. That was your first mistake. The second was raising that girl to think truth mattered more than survival. Carter's blood ran cold. You know Maya. The man turned to him fully. I know everything. I built this industry before you were old enough to spell algorithm. I built the trust you're so fond of tearing down. Then why try to destroy Hyan? Because you were too pure. You still believed in open platforms, in ethical code, in protecting user privacy. That's bad business, Carter. And espionage is better. It's efficient, the man said flatly. But don't take it personal. Vanessa was a tool. You were just in the way. Carter's hands curled into fists on his lap. So why meet now? Because this doesn't have to end with courtrooms and FBI headlines. Sell. Walk away. Hyan is valuable, but not irreplaceable. You walk, and I erase all traces of involvement. Maya gets to grow up safe. You get to retire with dignity. And the butterfly never lands again. There it was. The ultimatum. Carter stared out across the water, his thoughts racing. He thought of Vanessa's betrayal, of Maya's trembling voice in his office, of the way she had looked at her sketchbook that night when she said, "Pain should pay rent." He stood. The man remained seated. Think carefully. Carter turned to him, eyes calm, voice low. I have. You touched the wrong family. And with that, he walked away. Back at Hyan, Carter convened his senior team for a midnight war room session. Only 6 people. Maya sat quietly in the corner, scribbling notes on a legal pad she could barely hold up. We're going to leak, Carter said. Gasps. Eyebrows. To the press? Ellen asked. No. To them, Carter clarified. To Monarch's shell companies. We'll feed them a discovery and artificial prototype they'll think is the next big leap. But it's code-locked. It carries a trace. Signature. As soon as they open it, we'll have the digital path. Leon smiled. Reverse bait. Exactly. And when we find them, Carter met Leon's eyes, we burn the network. All of it. That night, Carter sat at Maya's bedside again. She was curled up, breathing softly, a stuffed bear tucked under one arm. The light from the hallway cast a long shadow over her, and Carter stood there longer than usual. He thought of what the man had said in the park, she thinks truth matters more than survival. He leaned down, kissed her forehead. She's right, he whispered. And that's why you'll lose. He walked out, leaving the door cracked open just enough to let the night know this house wasn't afraid anymore. The city was still sleeping when Carter Williams stood alone on the rooftop of Hyan Central headquarters, the skyline behind him glowing with the first blush of dawn. His suit jacket fluttered gently in the cool morning wind, and in his hand, he held a tablet, screen glowing faint blue, a live trace protocol running its course. The digital bait had been sent just hours before, carefully disguised as a breakthrough in predictive AI algorithms. Inside was the trap, a set of encrypted markers tied to an untraceable beacon until someone tried to decode it. The moment they did, the trail would lead straight back to Monarch. Downstairs, the war room buzzed with controlled tension. Leon stood at the center, issuing quiet orders. Screens displayed real-time logs, network pings, and one central graph, a spiderweb, slowly illuminating node by node. Maya was there, too, feet tucked beneath her in the leather chair Carter had given her the night before, laptop open, eyes sharp. She had helped design the visual signature that made the bait irresistible. It wasn't just smart. It was poetic. She'd called it butterfly sting. Suddenly, one of the trace maps lit up in red. A terminal pinged. They bit, Leon said. The room hushed. Then chaos erupted. Carter returned just as the trace finalized. It's not coming from a shell company, Leon said, brows knitting. It's coming from an investment firm, Beixler Capital, Midtown Manhattan. They own tech portfolios, not development labs. Unless, Carter said, narrowing his gaze, they've been laundering data under the disguise of financial assets. Leon pointed to a secondary trace path. Here's the handoff server. Whoever Monarch is, they're behind this IP chain, but it's masked behind a corporate firewall. Carter looked around the room. Then we go analog. The next morning, Carter stood outside the entrance of Bixler Capital's 57-story glass monolith. No entourage, no press, just him, a black coat, and a small folder tucked under his arm. He walked past reception with the calm authority of a man who owned the ground he stepped on. The receptionist started to say something, then didn't. His eyes alone said enough. He stepped into the private elevator with a single key card, one he'd acquired from a discreet high-end contact embedded deep within the financial network. Floor 47. Private access. The doors opened to a hush of gray carpet, abstract art, and silence that smelled like polished steel and rich mahogany. And then movement. A woman appeared at the far end of the hallway, sharp suit, cold eyes. And behind her, the gray-haired man from Battery Park. Mr. William, the man said, almost amused. You really don't understand subtlety, do you? Carter handed the folder to the assistant without a word. Inside, a full trace record of the digital trail, the embedded signature, and a copy of the NDAs violated by Bixler's shell entities. I came to offer you a final courtesy, Carter said. Disband your network. Erase everything, or I take this to federal authorities, 3 media outlets, and the SEC. The man glanced at the file, but only for a second. You're bluffing. Carter pulled out a second copy and tossed it on a nearby glass table. That one's already at a lawyer's office. You have until tonight. The man's smile faded. You have a child. Be careful where you shine your light. Carter's voice was ice. She's why I shine it. And he walked out, leaving the door open behind him like a storm warning. Back at Hyen, the mood was shifting. What had begun as a quiet internal cleanup now felt like a prelude to war. Maya felt it, too. She didn't speak much that day, just drew images of butterflies in dark forests, of skyscrapers with cracks, of small hands holding lanterns. Carter saw them all, and each one made him steadier. That evening, he returned home to find Vanessa's engagement ring sitting on his front porch in a small velvet box. No note, just the ring. He opened the lid slowly, staring down at the empty symbol. Then his phone vibrated. Blocked number. He answered. Hello, Carter. Vanessa's voice was soft, almost tender. You're not supposed to call me. I know. But I needed you to hear it from me. I didn't know they'd go after Maya. I swear, Carter, I thought it was just information. Clean, emotionless. You were engaged to me, he said. That's not clean. A long pause. I meant it at first. Then I forgot where the lie ended and the truth began. He said nothing. They're going to strike soon, she whispered. They won't just try to ruin you. They'll dismantle everything. Employees, data, Maya. He clenched the phone tighter. Why warn me? Because I'm not the monster they trained me to be. Then come in. Testify. Another pause. Goodbye, Carter. The line went dead. He stood there, the sun bleeding across the Atlanta sky, the box still open in his hand, and realized something. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about legacy. And legacy, he now knew, had to be defended not with walls, but with fire. That night, Hyen's senior team sat in the basement vault. Screens projected internal protocols. Carter stood at the head. We go full lockdown, he said. We secure all remote channels, disconnect all third-party apps, isolate the R&D servers, and initiate the black box protocol. What about Maya? Ellen asked. Carter looked at the young girl who had quietly walked in, carrying her drawing pad. She stays close. She's not just a kid anymore. She's part of this. Maya stepped forward. I have an idea. The room quieted. She showed them her patent interface map that combined data visualization with behavior prediction based on internal access anomalies. I call it ShadowNet. If they try to move inside our system again, this will trace who's working from the inside. Leon raised a brow. It could work. It will, Maya said simply. Carter smiled, the first time in days. We're not just protecting a company anymore, he said. We're protecting a generation, ours and hers. He looked around the room into tired eyes, determined faces. Tomorrow, he said, we end this. And for the first time in weeks, no one looked afraid. The day began in silence. No alarms, no meetings, no scheduled interruptions, just stillness. But for Carter William, it wasn't calm. It was the kind of silence before a storm breaks open the sky. He was already at high-end headquarters before sunrise, dressed not in a tailored suit, but a black long-sleeved shirt and worn jeans. The boardroom was dim, lights low, windows tinted. Every screen had been blacked out but one in Maya's custom-built interface, pulsing with dark blues and silvers. ShadowNet was live, already weaving through the company's digital corridors like a ghost in the wires. Maya sat beside him at the corner of the long conference table, sipping a warm cocoa. She was too young for this, and yet she was already more composed than half the adults in the room. Her drawings were gone, replaced by code, diagrams, focus. Do you want to run the trace when it starts? Carter asked her. She glanced up, serious. I already started it 30 minutes ago. He raised an eyebrow, and her fingers tapped a few keys. They're coming. At that exact moment, Leon's phone buzzed. Then Ellen's. Then the terminal began pinging erratically. Unauthorized login attempts. Location pings from Seoul, Frankfurt, and 2 places within the US. The attack was coordinated, layered through international proxy networks, but Maya's web traced the inner threads instantly. They're rerouting through cloud APIs, Leon said, voice low but sharp. Looks like the goal is to corrupt our IP library and rewrite internal ownership logs. They're trying to erase us from our own servers.